The movie starts with a passenger plane in flight. The aircraft commander, William Strong, greets the passengers and introduces the second pilot, Daniel Prentice. He informs them of their flight time, 7.5 hours, assures them they'll arrive in London on time, and wishes them a pleasant flight. Flight attendants serve drinks as various people occupy the cabin: women, men, elderly individuals, and 2 military personnel. The second pilot suggests performing a check at dawn since they've been airborne for a while. Suddenly, all the instruments start malfunctioning. Daniel tries to fix something, banging on the cockpit instruments, and they seem to start working. The plane enters turbulence, and the commander takes control. Simultaneously, he contacts the control center, informing them their instruments aren't working, and they're trying to solve the issue. Ahead, there's a strange area with lightning and clouds. William contacts the center again. They said the sky was clear, yet there's a storm ahead. But they are also surprised. This anomaly appeared on their screens literally 5 seconds ago. The captain communicates with the passengers, urging everyone to fasten their seatbelts and the crew to take their seats. The liner flies through the cloud. It shakes, frightening the people. Nevertheless, the pilots continue forward, doing their utmost to keep the plane steady. Reaching the center of this anomaly, the aircraft seems to pass through a portal. Darkness. Emerging from the storm, the pilots see it's already night, although sunset is still 40 or 50 minutes away. They are surprised. William addresses the passengers again, apologizing for the inconvenience and explaining they encountered a small storm, but everything's fine now. He also mentions that it's already night outside. They've flown over the Bermuda Triangle's peak, so they'll only be able to see the sunset tomorrow. One of the girls in the cabin takes out her laptop, but there's no internet connection. Checking her phone, she sees there's no signal either. Others have the same issue with their gadgets. The onboard instruments still don't work, but based on the liner's coordinates, the commander concludes they're still on course. He tries to contact the center. They need help due to electronic problems, but the center remains silent. The second man tries to solve the problem somehow, but neither the primary nor the backup instruments are functioning. He reports that only the radar system is working, the only device that wasn't replaced during the avionics upgrade. The flight attendants serve drinks and chat with the passengers. Among them, 2 men, historians, have discovered some military artifacts. A little further sits an elderly man, making notes throughout the flight. Approaching him, a flight attendant asks what he's working on. He simply replies that he's jotting down everything so as not to forget. The plane continues its journey. Daniel watches the radar, surprised that there's no one around them. Then the commander suggests making a turn to find someone. But this maneuver proves fruitless. According to the radar, they're alone in the sky. So Williams suggests descending below the clouds. If they lower a bit, they might see some visual signals from ships, and possibly transmit a signal through a cargo vessel. The second pilot hesitates, but the captain believes it's their only chance. Contacting stewardess Cameron, he informs her that he wants to make an announcement and for the crew to take their seats. The girl is surprised, but the man explains that they need to descend to avoid strong winds. She relays his words to the other stewards. The commander addresses the passengers, announcing that everyone needs to take their seats and fasten their seatbelts. The plane will descend below the clouds to avoid turbulence. The stewards take their seats and inform the captain that everything is ready. The pilots lower the liner but see land beneath them, although it should be the Atlantic. They conclude they've veered off course. Daniel suggests visually searching for a radio tower. Suddenly, they see a small plane on the radar, and a few seconds later, a whole bunch. The captain doubts, he's never seen anything like it. Descending a bit more, they see fog, but literally a minute later, they realize it's fire. The liner flies amidst fighters dropping bombs on the city below. The passengers are worried, seeing explosions, fire, and unfamiliar aircraft around. The historians discuss something intensely, looking at a book with pictures. Then out the window, a small plane with Nazi symbolism flies past. Seeing all this, Williams orders the navigation lights to be turned off and raises the plane to a higher altitude. The people in the cabin are very nervous and worried. They don't understand what's happening. One of the girls is very scared, fearing they could be shot down, like that plane in Ukraine. The stewards try to calm the passengers. Contacting the captain, Cameron really wants to know what's going on, but the captain asks her to just remain calm and not interfere with their flying the plane. Rising higher, the pilots see on the radar that everything is clear. Williams suggests keeping a distance from them and trying to descend again in a couple of minutes. They need to do this because without landmarks, they won't be able to figure out where they are. The commander addresses the passengers again, informing them that due to the storm, they veered off course and asks everyone to remain calm. Returning to the cabin, 2 historians approach the stewardess, saying they can help. Knocking on the cockpit door is Cameron. Behind her are the 2 historians. Pushing the girl aside, the men burst into the cockpit, shouting that they know those were Junkers Ju-88s and Hinkler's H-111. But Williams doesn't want to listen to them and asks them to leave. One of the passengers, sitting in front of the historians, cautiously approaches to hear what's happening. The men resist, saying that such planes stopped being produced back in 1945. Meanwhile, the historian notices that their instruments aren't working. The second pilot confirms this, saying that besides the radar, everything else is out of order. Then the second historian draws a parallel, complete lack of signal, as if there are no satellites at all. Hearing this, the captain gives them 30 seconds to voice their opinion. The men claim that their radio isn't working, and they can't contact the center after passing through the storm. That's because there were very few radio towers on the Western Front in 1940. This information shocks everyone who hears it. The historians believe that the planes everyone saw were flying to bomb Saint-Nazaire. In June 1940, Germany heavily bombed the western coast of France. However, the commander doesn't believe in all this and asks them to return to their seats. The men believe they can help, they just need to descend below the clouds. They know the geography of World War II very well. Williams agrees as he wants to understand where they are but doesn't want to believe anything about time travel. He says that even if they're right, they still won't be able to go back. Then the men make a suggestion. They'll need to find the same weather anomaly and simply pass through it. The captain asks everyone to return to their seats and requests that nobody tells anything to anyone. The eavesdropping man also returns to his seat. The captain addresses the passengers, announcing that the plane is beginning its descent and there's no need to worry. Everyone who is in the cockpit returns to their seats. The historians are actively discussing something. The man who overheard the entire conversation grabs the flight attendant's hand, demanding explanations about what's happening. But she says everything is under control and he'll find out along with everyone else. Releasing her hand, she threatens him with consequences if he does it again. The men discuss where they are. One of them starts sketching the landscape in his notebook. The second pilot suggests searching for storms, but the captain refuses and suggests focusing on the present. Williams tries to contact the control center once again, but no one answers. Daniel reports that they're alone within a radius of several miles. According to the radar, the historians see a river through the window. They experience incredible emotions because there's a war going on below them, and Hitler is only halfway away from them. Another week, and he'll be in Paris. The man sitting in front listens very attentively to their conversation. The plane continues its journey. The second pilot is very surprised that there's no light below, even though there are cities beneath them. Williams speculates that the lights have simply been turned off, so they can't hear anyone, and he tries to contact the center again. Suddenly, someone answers. He hears French speech first, followed by German. Gathering his thoughts, he communicates via radio who they are and asks for help. In response, he's told that it's a closed channel and can only be used in emergencies. The captain repeats that they are IA Flight 42 flying from Dallas. Their instruments aren't working, and they've just seen German bombers. The person they're speaking to introduces himself as Corporal Nigel Sheffield, and his location is classified. His job is to intercept long-range signals, which means they can't be on board the plane. Then Williams asks to be connected to civilian air traffic control, but he hears that it's impossible. They are in a combat zone. The commander asks to be connected to someone who can help, and the corporal decides to verify their data again, but upon hearing it, simply doesn't believe them. Resigned to the misunderstanding, the captain asks at least to help determine their location, and Nigel informs them that it's currently June 17, 2130, 1940. The pilots are simply shocked by what they've heard. Williams gets angry and frustrated. He doesn't understand how to convince the guy that their commercial flight is in trouble, and they need help. At this time, the historians finally figure out where they are and head to the captain to tell him everything. As soon as they leave, the man sitting in front secretly takes their book and starts studying it. The captain continues negotiations with Nigel, informing him that the only working instrument they have is the radar. Nigel is surprised. He's heard of such technologies being developed, but he doesn't have anything like that at his disposal. During the negotiations between Williams and the corporal, Cameron enters the cockpit with the historians. The professors say they've managed to identify rivers and hills and have just flown over the River Seine, northwest of France. They also report that they're confident they flew over the bombing of Saint-Nazaire and saw a Lancaster shot down and sunk there. However, Nigel doesn't believe them. Then the historian tells him that they're from the 21st century, flying from Washington to London, passed through a storm, and now they're here. But the captain interrupts them. They're completely alone, in a combat zone, and they need help. The professor suggests telling about the bombing of Saint-Nazaire. They identified the German planes, Junkers Ju-88s, Hinklers H-111, Messerschmitt Bf-110, and the Lancaster. They ask him to request confirmation that it was lost. Nigel agrees to do this and asks them to return to this frequency in 30 minutes. The corporal goes to the colonel and reports everything he heard. Meanwhile, the man studies the stolen book and figures out what's going on. Getting up from his seat, he addresses all the passengers, saying the crew forgot to tell them something. He believes they've traveled through time, but the others laugh and don't believe him. But he continues to persuade people that they've ended up in World War II times and won't survive here. He suggests changing the course of history and killing Hitler. They know where he will be at any given time, and they can do it. The stewards try to stop him, but another couple of men intervene. They are on his side and also believe that it will all work out. They just need to convince the pilots. Two military guys interrupt their dialogue, asking everyone to return to their seats, but they don't listen. A fight ensues. When the soldiers and stewards manage to calm the men down, the sergeant explains to them that changing the course of history is not allowed. Perhaps they'll make things better, or perhaps they'll only worsen the situation. After all, if the Germans get their hands on new technologies and the book, everything will change, and the Nazi flag will fly over the White House. After doing some calculations, Daniel says they'll stay in the air for about 150 minutes at the current rate, not even counting maneuvering. Nigel gets in touch with the captain, letting him know he's sorted things out with command. Even though their claim about time travel raises doubts, the info about Lancashire turned out to be spot on. And the intel on firepower will be a big help too. He also shares that the Battle of Dunkirk was a bloody mess, with around 500,000 soldiers killed. This shocks the professors, as in their history, the Dunkirk evacuation was a major success. So, the commander figures out they're not in the past they know. Continuing the chat with the corporal, Williams asks for a safe route and a place to land, plus any info on unusual storms. With their location clarified, Nigel says they're nearing the German border and need to change course urgently. Plus, they intercepted German chatter, so the Germans know there's an unknown plane in France's skies. The commander wonders if there are any friendly forces in their flight zone who might see them, but the guy says he's not sure where exactly they are, and the co-pilot suggests turning on landing and navigation lights. With the navigation lights on, they keep moving when suddenly the pilots spot a group of planes closing in fast on the radar. The commander urgently tells everyone in the cabin to take their seats. German jet fighters surround the passenger plane and start shooting at it. Panic erupts in the cabin. The pilots maneuver and dodge bullets. Trying to shake off the pursuers, Williams comes up with a plan. He sharply tilts the plane and dives at a crazy speed. The pursuers follow. Dropping to 1,000 feet, the pilots level the liner and soar back up. Some of the chasing fighters can't pull off the same move and crash. The rest keep chasing. During another barrage, a fighter hits the passenger plane, piercing the cockpit and injuring Daniel in the side. Stewardesses rush to the men's cries with a first aid kit. One of them checks the co-pilot and says his wound isn't deep, she can help him. The captain informs them that they've got another problem. They burned a lot of fuel because of these maneuvers, and due to depressurization, they need to descend. There's no contact with Nigel. Daniel figures they have only two options: climb above the clouds and be safe, or descend and get shot, but they can't land. The front landing gear is damaged. Hearing all this, Cameron suggests asking for help from the passengers. They won't make it without them. Giving control of the liner to the co-pilot, Williams heads to the people in the cabin. Nigel reports to the colonel that they've lost contact with Flight 42. The last he knows, they were attacked by Germans, but he'll keep trying to reach them. So the commander orders him to find out everything about their radar, and he warns that since they've got such a high-tech plane, they'll probably have to shoot it down themselves to keep it from falling into Nazi hands. Heading out to the passengers, the captain tells them they've indeed ended up in the past, in 1940, and the only thing they can do is stay calm and find a safe place to land. But their landing gear is damaged, and he needs volunteer helpers. Two people step up, engineer Teresa and jack of all trades Hector. The captain, Teresa, and Hector head to the front electronics compartment. The captain inspects the landing gear while Teresa checks the electronics. She finds severed wires and reconnects them. As soon as she does, the landing gear compartment doors open. Williams contacts Daniel to try to deploy the landing gear, but nothing happens. Hector carefully inspects the strut and finds the fault. The commander plans to go down there himself, but Hector volunteers to go down and fix it. After fixing the problem, he plans to return to the plane, but he slips off the wheel. By a stroke of luck, he manages to hold on and climb back up. Returning to the cabin, the commander informs everyone that the landing gear is fixed. Entering the cockpit, he hears from the co-pilot that they only have fuel left for 90 minutes. By lowering their altitude, they manage to get in touch with Nigel. He's glad to hear from them, clarifies their current location, and says he's trying to find a safe landing spot for them. He also asks for information about their radar. One of the historians explains to him what it is, how it works, and what it looks like. The corporal wants to tell him more about his command, but he's interrupted. German fighters are spotted again, and the shooting starts. However, this time, besides machine gun fire, there are also rockets. One of the explosions blows out several windows in the plane. On the radar, the pilots see that they're being pursued by two planes, one behind and one ahead. Making a decision, Will flies straight at the fighter, then pulls up at the last moment. It flies under them and fails to dodge its comrade. The two fighters collide and explode. The professors and pilots discuss their next step. One of the historians suggests giving the radar to the British. It would be easier for them to coordinate their actions. He hypothesizes that perhaps they ended up here just for that reason, because such technologies won't appear for several more years. The captain agrees and plans to get in touch with Nigel to inform him of the decision. But suddenly they see a missile flying towards them. It grazes the plane, knocking out one of the engines. After a few attempts, the pilots manage to restart it. Leveling the plane, the commander contacts the corporal, informing him that they're ready to hand over the radar, as it's their only chance to survive. Nigel gives them coordinates for where they should drop the package. The captain sends part of the crew to dismantle the radar, while the other part searches for something to use as a parachute for the drop. As soon as Nigel informs the colonel that they're ready to hand over their radar, he orders all airstrikes to be cancelled. Meanwhile, the team works on dismantling the radar and finding something to use as a parachute. Upon hearing this, an elderly man suggests using polyethylene ponchos. He bought them for his grandchildren. Crafting a parachute from the ponchos and packing the radar into a backpack, they drop the package at the designated location. Nigel reports that they've sent a squad to search, and they urgently need to gain altitude. They've decoded many hostile messages. The Germans intercept the messages and also set out to search for the package. They find it first but are unable to retrieve it before the search squad arrives. A shootout ensues. After killing all the Germans, the squad retrieves the radar. During this time, German fighters are chasing the passenger liner. One of the missiles hits the side of the plane, literally throwing passengers sitting in that area outside. Panic ensues inside the plane as the pilots try to stabilize it. Meanwhile, Nigel receives the radar. Getting in touch with Flight 42, he hears that they're running out of fuel. Setting up the radar, the corporal changes the plane's route and they end up in another firefight. But this time, it's not just Germans, there are also Allied planes. Seeing all this, Williams finally believes it's World War II. Suddenly, the guy spots an anomaly on the radar directly in their path. Getting closer, they see it's the same storm that brought them here. Gathering his courage, the commander thanks all the passengers for their resilience and endurance. He thanks Nigel for his help and says goodbye. The plane approaches the anomaly, shaking violently, and the passengers are terrified. As soon as Flight 42 passes through the storm, they return to the present. Immediately, they establish contact with the control center. Williams reports that they're flying with almost empty tanks and urgently need to land. The control tower gives clearance. They can choose any runway for landing. The plane lowers its landing gear, and on the runways, emergency services are waiting for them. The liner successfully lands. The pilots exhale with joy. They've made it. Passengers embrace each other and leave the plane. Only an elderly man remains in the cabin. The captain approaches him, saying it's time to go. The man asks for just one more minute. He's almost finished. Glancing at his notes, Williams is surprised to see the flight route and many other entries about the radar and the war. The elderly man closes his notebook, and the commander sees a golden inscription on the cover, Nigel Sheffield. William Strong leaves the plane, as is fitting for a captain. Last, was it right for them not to intervene more in history than they did? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Hit the like button and subscribe to the channel. Till next time.